I have pretty much used up my slab of Chatham lab-created emerald and am working on getting another slab. Unfortunately, Chatham decided several years ago to stop selling their rough, and they cut all the rough themselves into finished stones and sell them. So again, I still have some Chatham rough, but now I'm working on a different laboratory to get some more hydrothermally grown emerald rough. It's been a lengthy process, but I hope to have a new slab of rough soon. For now, it's not a problem for me to find a piece of rough that will work for this stone, which is just a 6mm Portuguese cut. I still have enough remaining emerald rough in my stash for this stone. In a previous video, I explained all about how lab-created emerald is emerald, with the only differences being the emerald crystals were grown in a laboratory instead of in the earth by nature. In that video, I explained all about the great American Chatham family and how they succeeded in figuring out how to grow emeralds and other gemstone rough in a laboratory. Here is a link to that video. If I cut this stone correctly, it should look like this from the top, side, and bottom. Jeff put his Gram Portuguese design into the public domain for all cutters to freely use. And I explained in a previous video how to go back in time on the internet to access Jeff's old website and download this and about 3 dozen other designs by Jeff, as well as accessing all the articles Jeff wrote on gem cutting. This is the video where you can find Jeff's designs. Okay, so for our piece of lab-created emerald, preformed it. I started with the 600 grit diamond on a topper, and so I just finished that. So now it's pretty well preformed. I don't have a center point yet, and it's not quite the right. It's still a little bit too wide. It needs to be a little smaller for the customer, but I do have some to take out anyway. I still have to make it a little smaller because of these. They look like little graphite tunnels or pipes in your, when you buy a slab of lab created emerald, and what they are, assuming, is they are kind of a, a feed source to help grow the crystal that is put into the what becomes the emerald. So but it looks like a little piece of lead graphite if you ever see it, if you ever buy a piece of lab created emerald, hydrothermal lab created emerald. So that'll have to come out to make it a little smaller, but again, I have to make it a little smaller anyway, and I'm not quite small enough on this side. That's why it's not perfectly round. So it'll be a little smaller. It's coming along nicely. I'll go to the 1200 and see where we're at. I finished pre-polishing our lab created emerald with 3000 grit diamond on a bat lap, and it's looking really good, ready to polish. And this actual color of this created emerald is called the Zambian. So sometimes you'll see Colombian color and you'll see Zambian color, or you'll see emerald color and Colombian color, or something in Colombian color. So Colombian color is a little more greenish, lighter, little bit lighter and more blue-green. And the other emerald that generally when they're creating them in the laboratory, there's 2 different types. The other type is this color, which is a little darker. They're both beautiful, much better color, more vivid, and certainly less inclusions than you could find in nature. Mother Nature just doesn't treat the emerald very well. So now we're going to polish our Portuguese cut. Okay, I polished our lab-grown emerald with my tin lap with cerium oxide. I polished it right up, no problems. And now I'll transfer the stone in the transfer jig, and we'll be able to cut the top half or the crown of the stone. Okay, I'm going to put a teeny piece of modeling clay very bottom of the dop. And all that is to protect the little culet or the pointy part of our standard round brilliant stone, so that I don't want the glue, the super glue holding the culet, because it broke once or twice, and having the modeling clay there prevents it from breaking off the culet. So I'll tighten the bottom part, lift the top part up, and put a drop of my super glue Loctite 404, and push the top part onto the bottom, although you could push the bottom part onto the top, it wouldn't make any difference. And then just move it around so that there's glue on both the dop and the stone. Super glue sets up pretty quick, so you don't have to spend much time adjusting it, but with two-part epoxy sometimes you do. And then I'll let this harden overnight and we'll be ready to cut the top half of the stone. For this grown emerald, I started with a 600 topper because there's not a whole lot of material to grind. So 600 ground it down, and then I went to my Adamas 12M, which is about a 1500 grit diamond lap, so it's close enough to a 1200. And now I'm going to go over the facets again with the 3000 grit diamond on a bat lap, and then I'll polish it. And I believe I'm going to use the tin lap and cerium oxide. Okay, I finished polishing the crown of our emerald, and I have the table left to do, so I'll take the dop out of our machine and set the machine up to cut the table by setting the angle at 45 degrees and then using our 45 degree tabling adapter to give us 90 degrees so we can cut a flat table. Okay, the steps to set up for cutting the table is to remove the set screw that's in our spindle. It's just because we have a tool that has to slide over this spindle, and if the screw's there, it won't slide over. And you don't want to lose this little brass teeny tiny screw, so Ultratech has a hole drilled in the machine, and that's its sole purpose in being, is that when you're setting up to cut the table, that you have a place to put that screw. That's it, it just won't get lost. Next step is use your 45 degree tabling adapter, this tool right here, and what we're going to do is slide this over the spindle. That's why we had to remove the set screw, and we're going to set the spindle at 45 degrees, and this tool is also at 45 degrees so that the dop will fit in at 90 degrees and we'll be able to cut a flat dop. So we put the Ultratech at a 45 degree angle, and it's always a good idea to check anytime you can, to remember to check your cheater and make sure it's still zeroed out. Some of them move a little bit, so you always want to check that. The next step is I always put the index tooth at 96. I don't think it matters, but I just do that as a matter of habit. I cut all my tables with it at 96. So I do that. I don't think it matters, but that's what I do. So now you slide the 45 degree tabling adapter over your spindle. And the only problem would be is if table would not be cut flat. So some people do just use the table in the adapter as it is, and they set it to your flattest disc, and they just run the spindle down until it hits the disc, and then that's flat. That's a way a lot of cutters do it. The tools that come with your Ultratech machine, it gives you a liner that you put into your 45-degree tabling adapter, and the aligner has a much larger base than your 45-degree tabling adapter, and I turn it sideways so it's even a wider base. So that makes sure that you're flat. So that's the way Ultratech recommends with the tool that comes with Ultratech, but like I said, other people do not use that tool and they just use their flattest disc. Then you set the 2 set screws on the 45-degree tabling adapter. You remove the table aligner, that's its only purpose, and you put your dop that you want to cut the crown, that you want to cut the table of, into your machine. For me, I keep the V pointed at the 96. That's just the way I do it. I don't think it matters. And I run it up in the bottom until this part of the dop is the width that fits in the hole for your 45-degree tabling adapter. So I move that all the way up. I don't go beyond that, and then I tighten it up. Sometimes I've had some cutters tell me that, okay, so occasionally I'll have a squeal. You'll hear a screeching noise as you're cutting your table, and I have had some cutters tell me that that is because you have too much space here, and that the more space you have, the more vibration you have down here potentially. Yeah, I guess in theory, but that's not, when I tested that, that's not the case. It didn't matter how far I moved the dop up or down. That did not affect the screeching. The screeching, the times I checked it, were due to not enough lubrication on the lap that you were using to cut your table. But that was just my experience, so you know. All right, so now we're ready to cut the table for our emerald. Okay, the other thing is that when you're cutting your table, and actually when you're cutting all of it, is that you don't need to keep your finger on the stone. I know, as a new cutter, you always absolutely want to hold that stone. Even as experienced cutters, about 50% think, you always have to have your finger on that stone, and I always did for many, many years. But especially with the crown, with the table, it gets hard to get your finger under there and hold the stone. And so you just have to learn to trust your machinery. You don't need to hold the stone. Ultratech designed this handle so that it actually is designed to not put a lot of pressure on the stone. So use your handle, and as you cut your table, trust in your equipment, it'll be fine. And just get used to using your handle to cut the table and not trying to reach into the stone. But if you're one of the other 50% of the cutters who absolutely positively have to have their finger on that stone, okay. If it works for you, it works for you. So I'm using a 600 grit topper to initially work on our table. So I often will pull the stone up and check with the loop to see how I'm doing. I move generally very slowly, check often when I'm at the cutting of the table. Don't want to overcut it. I still have to use my 12M lap or the 1200 Crystallite if that's what you're using, and then the 3000 grit or polish. Go a little bit further and then switch to my 12M. And that's as far as I'll go with my topper, my 600 grit topper. Now I'll use my 12M, which is about the equivalent of a 1500 grit lap. And then I'll go to the 3000. So we'll continue polishing the table. Again, you don't have to touch the stone. It'll be okay. All right, I finished polishing the table of our emeralds, and I used tin lap with cerium oxide, and so now I'll put it in the acetone and eat away the super glue, and then we'll weigh it and measure it and send it off to Popie. I really like the Portuguese cut and the way this stone turned out. My 12M lap has become my go-to lap for what I used to use a 1200 grit Crystallite lap for. 12M is working out great. I think a new cutter could tackle a Portuguese cut as a first stone, but I would not recommend it simply because of the number of facets involved in the Portuguese cut. My recommendation to a new cutter's first stone is to cut the standard round brilliant, which has a whole lot less facets to cut and polish. But it's up to you, just enjoy. Finally, here's an update on me getting additional lab-grown emerald rough. There are a few, less than half a dozen, I guess, labs around the world creating and attempting to create gemstone rough, diamond rough, emerald rough. One of these laboratories is in the vicinity of Novosibirsk, I guess is how you pronounce it, which is in Russia. Well, it took about 3 weeks of corresponding with the manager of the lab before I was able to agree upon and select a piece of rough that meets my requirements. I wanted something thick, at least 12 millimeters, so I can cut large stones. Clean. The labs are now creating a lot of emerald, or a lot of rough that's actually included on purpose. So I didn't want the included rough, so it's clean. And I wanted it to have a vivid Colombian emerald color, which I explained earlier in this video that there's generally two shades of emerald colored rough being produced, the Zambian, which is a little darker, and the Colombian, which is more of a vivid green. I want this slab to be the Colombian color. So finally, my slab has cleared U.S. Customs, and it's almost here. 2-day priority mail. Awesome. So that's 3 weeks negotiating for the slab that I wanted, and 4 weeks on Santa's sleigh, as it should arrive any day now. Yay. So let me know what you think of the final stone I just cut in the comments. Happy fastening, everyone.